I've done quite a few videos on school and other mass shooters, and I decided it was time for yet another video. Anyway, today we're going to talk about profiling a mass shooter. This is rather difficult. Most people will assume that these guys were young. They aren't all in their teenagers and in their 20s. Some of them are rather old. Some of them have been in their 40s, such as James Oliver Huberty and Stephen Paddock, who was in his 60s. There's also, it's like that, and they're not all racial, they're not all white. They can be minorities too. There have been Asians who have done it. There have even been blacks who have done it. And most people assume that, because they assume that all these people were picked on or messed with or whatever, that they just did this shit. That's who the school shooter is always the kid who was picked on. That is not always true. Not true at all. Yes, you find that some of the kids, like the Columbine shooters, and Eric Harris Dillard-Klebold from Columbine, Cho from Virginia Tech, and Nicholas Cruz. They were all picked on, and some of them were however, some of them were actually known as bullies themselves, such as Charles Whitman. He abused his wife and would regularly taunt the boys in his scout troop. That being said, as I know I mentioned Nicholas Cruz in the bullied category, but I've read a lot of stuff that says he was not really a nice person either. And he wasn't really a bully, he just wasn't really all that friendly. But what we see here is in a lot of cases there's social ostracization. There's a lot of different things going on, but usually they're socially isolated. They don't have much to live for because there is no such thing as a happy mass shooter. They're always unhappy people. And they have suffered, although they don't just snap, not by no means, this is not a psychotic break that these people are going through. It is the result of years of, shit, like it could be depression. Well, it's usually, depression has a lot to do with paranoid schizophrenia, whatever, but whatever it is, downloading mass shooter into somebody's psyche is a very, very slow process. And it takes years. However, there's usually a really traumatic event that happens before the shooting. It could be a breakup. It could be public humiliation. It could be losing a job. It could be, losing a family member or something. It could be anything, you know what I mean? It could be becoming homeless. It could be, anything. But it's kind of like the anvil that broke the camel's back. Not the straw, the anvil that just went and really pushed him over the edge. Anyway, this is not a psychotic break. These people don't just lose it one day. They spend years seething, and then something happens where they just say, fuck this shit, and they go mad. And because they have nothing to live for, they don't really have any reason not to commit the mass shootings, because what can society do to them? Kill them? Sentence them to death? Sentence them to life in prison with no chance of parole? Well, what do they have to live for? And what's also interesting is that, sometimes these people are actually, on the outside appear very successful, such as Charles Whitman and Stephen Paddock. But they aren't always. They have a specific grievance against the world, and they're usually misanthropes for whatever reason. And which brings me to, remember how I said that some of these school shooters were not always bully victims, but in some cases they were actually the bullies themselves? They may bully others because they just hate humanity for whatever reason. And it's kind of like they don't have much to live for, and the mass shooting, it gives them something to do with their time. They do it to give their lives purpose. If they're already suicidal, it gives them purpose. And these mass shootings, they planning them or preparing for them, whatever, it becomes like a job, like a career, or an occupation, or in short, an obsession. They study, they plan, and sometimes they execute. However, it's important to note that probably for every person who does go through with a mass shooting, about 100 fantasize about it and 10 consider it. And it's like Elliot Rodger. He got messed with quite a bit in his younger years, and later on turned into very much the bully himself. I mean, he was throwing orange juice on people. He tried to push women off of a balcony and got the shit stomped out of him for it. And I know what you're thinking. He deserved it. Well, I got news for you. Everybody else thought that, everyone that is, except Elliot Oliver Rodger, who went on a killing spree a few months down the road. But that was the tipping point for him. That was the one bad thing that happened to him. And he said that, being able to find a girlfriend would have stopped the day of retribution. Quite frankly, I believe him, because people are planning to commit crimes and something good happens to them and they don't. And as far as, for example, there are just so many intervals here, so many factors that go into it and all that stuff. But some of the common characteristics are they're generally socially isolated. They have an obsession with guns, weapons, and stuff like that. They may be interested in the military, or they may be interested in the military, police work, terrorist actions, or criminal activity. They often are obsessed with violent movies and video games. They often have they often will draw violent pictures or write violent stories. They also talk about killing some of the time, not all the time. It's like Stephen Paddock, he didn't talk about shooting anybody. Neither did Dmitry Paragotsits. The Columbine shooters, at least Eric Harris did, and as did Charles Whitman. Sometimes you just don't see these things coming, such as the case with Stephen Paddock, Adam Lanza, and Dimitrios Paragotsits. Others are a little more vocal, such as Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, Nicholas Cruz, all of them. And it's just, there is no concrete way to profile a mass shooter. Sometimes every red flag is there and nothing happens. Sometimes there are no red flags and all hell breaks loose. And even when there are red flags, oftentimes there's nothing the police can do, because the Constitution says that you can't arrest somebody or let alone incarcerate them until they commit a crime. Sorry. But anyway, it's like, the red flags can be thrown up, like, all you people need to die, and all that stuff, or mankind deserves to be obliterated. Yeah, definite red flag. And all that stuff. I hate humanity. I wish you would all die. You all need to die, and all that stuff. Yeah, the definite red flag, but sorry, doesn't constitute a direct threat. And anyway, the police often have a lot of things to juggle. I mean, they can't just arrest everybody who makes a threat, because otherwise they'd go bankrupt from trying to house all the people who made violent threats, because they happen all the time. Donald Trump gets more death threats in the mail than you get, than you care to think about. I mean, I bet his death threat, if you got a list of death threats that he got in one day, it'd probably be like this high. And it's simple that, the FBI, the police department, the sheriff's department, the state troopers, they can't follow up every threat. They just don't have the manpower or resources to do so. And and mass shootings are contagious. I believe that. They look at these people, and they see people that are portrayed as the anti-hero, or even a villain, and that they see that this person went from nobody to nightmare, and now all of a sudden has a lot of social status. Everybody's talking about him. Facebook is just filled with their image. Twitter's filled with their image. News articles about them. They're front page news. The news broadcasters won't shut up about them. And they see all that quote-unquote glory, and they want it for themselves. Because they are nobody. They have nothing going on, and they're anonymous. And they hate that. And to a lot of people, being anonymous is just a fate worse than death. And back to what I was saying. There is a lot of things that go into this. I'm just trying to show how tough it can be to identify a mass shooter, because a lot of people collect weapons and do nothing and are perfectly harmless. A lot of people, make violent threats even though they're harmless. There's just so much stuff that goes into it. And, you can read and go and look all this crap up all you want. But anyway, there is much more stuff that I mentioned, and I hope you'll look it up if you're interested. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned. There will be more. See y'all later.